Customer experience can make a huge impact on your company's success. So it makes sense that CX should be a big part of how you train your employees.
We had not integrated the customer service piece. It was sort of woven into the systems, but it wasn't woven into our training. We have now included that at every level, and it's made a big difference.
We'll learn how one company has integrated a culture of customer experience into its training process on this episode of the CX Leader Podcast.
The CX Leader Podcast with Steve Walker is produced by Walker, a business consulting firm that helps our clients unlock the potential of their customer experiences by placing the customer at the heart of all their business decisions. You can find out more at walkerinfo.com.
Hello, I'm Steve Walker, Chairman and CEO of Walker Information and also host of the CX Leader Podcast, and thank you for listening. The CX Leader Podcast is where we explore the topics and themes to help leaders like you leverage all the benefits of your customer experience and help your customers and prospects want to do more business with you. We've been getting some great insight with our CX User series on how companies execute their customer experience strategies. Having interviewed the CX practitioners and implementers from Johnson Controls and Wild Birds Unlimited, we have an opportunity in this episode to peer into a more specific field, facilities management within the healthcare space. Medxcel is a healthcare facilities management company based here in Indianapolis whose services range from facilities maintenance to management of construction projects, safety and care environments. And on this episode, we're joined by two people deeply involved in the CX efforts there at Medxcel. With me in the studio is Sharon Bislich, the Manager of Customer Engagement. And joining us via Skype is Carolyn Bodkin, who's the manager of the training team. Sharon, Carolyn, thanks for being on the CX Leader Podcast.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
It's a real pleasure to have you guys on. Sharon, since you're here in the studio, why don't you just tell us a little bit about Medxcel, a little more than I was able to provide there.
It's the unique opportunity to really start a company from scratch. We're 5 years old, and we were stood up next to an existing company that was sold about 2 years in. So then we were on our own. And so it gave us the unique opportunity to start the customer engagement initiative with just a few desperate programs and then bring those together into something more holistic.
So you really started right from the start with
Yes.
having a customer experience focus.
Yes, we did. And we're in a very unique situation of our leadership are all on board. This is something that we really don't fight from the leadership perspective. They embrace the information, and they look forward to it, plan for it each year. We're moving to dashboards. They're very engaged in the data itself. So that's a great opportunity for us as well.
So just a little more context for our listeners, who would be your customers?
Patients and C-suite as well as clinical staff within any hospital facility that we service.
Okay.
So they range from unit clerk, nurses, nurse managers, all the way up to the CFO, CEO of a hospital system.
So you're primarily focused on big hospital systems? Or do you do like outpatient clinics, doctor's offices, those sorts of things too?
Yes, we do what it's called medical office buildings.
Okay.
In our terminology.
Medical office buildings.
Yeah, and those that are affiliated with the systems,
Okay.
we do cover those as well.
Okay. So, yeah, anybody who's really on premise is really a user of your services directly or indirectly.
Yes.
So.
While we don't encourage patients to call our call center,
Correct.
they do.
They do.
So we do have customers of all types.
Yeah. And your role as the leader of the CX?
Is to really develop the program from scratch.
Okay.
We've had a lot of collaboration within Medxcel. We started out with what we call our CARE program, which is a transaction program.
Okay.
And that was actually started within our CEC. And they take work orders. And so we do a everyday transaction program with that. We moved into then the voice of the customer as we were about maybe 18 months old. And then we've done journey mapping since then. But each year, I prepare a research plan for that year with goals and the objectives for the year so that we see growth in the program. We also, like many CX people, we don't increase staff as the company grows. So that's really where Carolyn's team comes in, is we need to find a way to take the things that my team does in the beginning and move that and operationalize it. So Carolyn's team has been a great partner with us in incorporating many of the CX findings into their training, so that then it can be operationalized throughout the 2,000 associates versus just two of us who are really, doing some of the backbone work.
So Carolyn works in a different area than you.
Yes.
Correct? But in her job, well, we ought to just turn to Carolyn at this point. So Carolyn, you're the manager of training, and I assume that the training encompasses all aspects of training. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, that's fair to say. We were slow to this game. I'm embarrassed almost by it, but when we caught the fire, we caught it hot and fast. So with Sharon's team, we developed training that is now out for the whole field. That is some customer-focused customer service training. And we then took what Sharon and her team have been working on for a long time and integrated it throughout our training programs. Just to describe some of the training that we do, our technicians are, in general, working from the transition that they take is quite a large one. They are coming from a paper work order system to a computerized work order system with their main and primary work tool as an iPhone. They are older gentlemen in general who have worked sometimes decades in their hospitals, and so it's a huge change. We did a lot of change management at the beginning, and of course the technical piece of learning the phone, but we had not integrated the customer service piece until, Sharon, maybe 6 months ago. It was sort of woven into the systems, but it wasn't woven into our training. And so we have now included that at every level, and it's made a big difference. It's made a big difference in several ways. First, it has impacted, I think, how we think of the job that we do as trainers for our customers, who are the technicians and associates who are joining our company. I think, once customer service becomes part of the culture, everybody thinks about it. And so we have evaluated just how we're responding to our customers, our internal customers. And then it's also impacted, I think, our technicians in the field, because they now, especially as we ask them to follow up and close a transaction in terms of the customer exchange that they have, I think they are now being seen with a different level of expertise, and they are being acknowledged and recognized in a way that they may not have been before. Much of the work that we do for hospitals is the kind of work that is invisible but important. So our technicians were sort of used to being invisible, and now as they're following our customer service model and becoming more focused on customer service, I think it's bringing accolades to them that they didn't have before, and their expertise is being recognized.
So you said a lot there, Carolyn. Let me unpack a little bit of this. So you said that there's 2,000 Medxcel employees? Yes. And about how many of those would be out in the field actually servicing the facilities?
I believe we have 200 in the corporate office, and the remainder are scattered in about 8 to 10 states, 150 major hospitals, about 2,000 sites in total.
Wow. So most of the people are out actually running these facilities. And as Carolyn said, they probably didn't originally get into this field to be in the customer service deal, right?
Right.
Yeah, they liked working with their hands. They liked fixing stuff. They liked figuring out how to, make things better, but maybe not as big on the soft skills and the people skills.
Correct.
So that's been this whole effort, right? That you've come in, you've built this thing from scratch, and now you're partnering with Carolyn to actually deploy this out through this huge organization,
Right.
2,000 people.
Right.
So,
And it's really, it can't be said enough of the challenge of consistency and making sure that the customer has a consistent experience at each location. With 150 sites and probably 123 in leadership out in the field, that's just a lot of information that we're trying to funnel through, and the application of it to get that consistent is definitely a challenge that Carolyn's team attempts to overcome. And then we also have systems people that, put in checkpoints within our CMMS tickets so that the technicians are constantly reminded to make that extra effort to have the discussion with the customer.
So a lot of our listeners are CX pros, or they're involved in other organizations. And one of the beauties of this users series is that we get to explore how kind of other companies attack things. So where do you report, Sharon?
I report through marketing.
Through marketing. And then Carolyn, do you report up through the ops side, or in
Well,
HR?
that's an interesting question. We started through the ops side, and then we moved to the regulatory compliance area, and we have just recently moved to HR.
So you guys don't report to each other. You guys are
No.
and yet you've
We're peers.
okay, but you've obviously found some common ground here.
Yes.
And so, Carolyn, were you familiar with customer experience data, and was this something that was kind of on your radar, or did Sharon bring this to the organization?
Well, yes, Sharon brought it to the organization. My degrees are actually in economics, so I glommed on really quickly because I thought it was such cool data.
Yeah.
So Sharon excited me about it, and my personal experience was I was in meetings where they were asking me if this was in training or that was in training, and I kept finding myself saying no to all their questions. And I thought, we've got to do something about this to get some of their content into our program. So,
Well, it's a great example of how you start to deliver this, even in something that we probably wouldn't think of naturally as being customer experience. But this is a customer experience economy, and in a healthcare setting, obviously the facilities are a big part of what the inpatient is actually experiencing. So,
Well, our major focus is on insourcing and bringing the talent back in to the facility itself. And to do that, we have to make sure that that talent is really prepared and that they can handle those situations the way that in a professional manner, in a way that's consistent across all facilities.
yeah, so even though they're your employees, they're on site at the hospital most of the time, if not all the time.
And many of them, some of them were even born in these facilities.
Yeah.
So they've been there for years. And,
Literally.
Yes. And then to get them to identify with Medxcel as their employer and to kind of change their perspective that these people that they've worked with for years are now their customer, that takes a dedicated effort from everything that they're being exposed to.
and you really can't overstate that. Pardon me for interrupting.
No,
You really
you're
can't
fine.
overstate that part about the idea that these folks are their customers now. Just in the last day or two, I've been training in a facility, and I had to stop literally 5 times and say, oh, yes, that's your customer. That patient is your customer. That hospital employee is your customer. And so they've had it's really difficult for them to make the customer mind shift about these people who were their sort of partners and colleagues now to being their customers.
We are having a fantastic and fascinating conversation on this week's CX Leader podcast with Sharon Bislich, the Manager of Customer Engagement at Medxcel, and Carolyn Bodkin, who is the head of the training team. Medxcel is not a household word, but as we've learned, providing services to over 150 hospital and medical office buildings through about 2,000 associates who provide this service to these facilities. We've had a good example here of how you've integrated it into the training, Sharon, but how do you work with the other parts of the organization in cascading the customer experience data throughout the organization?
Well, this year's been a unique challenge and a great opportunity because two of the three major goals for our organization come from the customer. So from a leadership perspective, they're very engaged. Like I said, they've been engaged since the very beginning. We use the data to do our annual objective planning, and our 3 and 5 year plan is based on customer data as well. So from a leadership perspective, they've been very engaged since the start. From a CO perspective, I think that has really been a bigger challenge because there are subject matter experts. There are people that work every day to support the field, but they don't see the customer face-to-face every day. And really the way that we've done that is through verbatim comments and qualitative information. We did a really unique exercise the first year we did Voice of the Customer, where we had different groups come together and they actually coded the information and took every single comment from the Voice of the Customer and they laid them out on a makeshift journey map so that they could see what the customer was saying, right out of their mouth.
That sounds like a fantastic exercise.
It was amazing.
It was amazing.
There were individuals that were like, wow, they love us. This is great. And then you would read somebody else was like, oh, man, we really missed the mark. What are we going to do to change that? But it was all about awareness. You can't fix what you don't know. And so that really started, I think, from a internal departmental leadership perspective that increased the awareness to the point where that's kind of top of mind. As I mentioned, with it being 2 of the 3 goals, this year that awareness has become just exponentially exploded to where they want to know where we're at, what are we doing, when's our next Voice of the Customer coming up. So those are all kinds of great challenges to have.
Carolyn, what kind of changes have you seen in the staff over the course of this journey you've been on to integrate the customer experience more fully into your operations?
Well, I would say for the field, this is a relatively new change. I'm not sure that it's very mature, the change in the field. But I think that Sharon's data that she provides, I think people are, managers and leaders at the sites are now more accustomed to receiving data and understanding what they're receiving and how they can impact it. And I think it's beginning to translate down now and to begin to be part of the culture. I think that, cultural change takes a long time. And it's not that the company needed to change because we're such a new company, but because we grew from all these existing teams that we have integrated into the company, the culture had to be rebuilt. And so I think the focus on data that Sharon brings and the importance that it gets not only from Sharon's team, but the fact that she has been able to work with other groups little by little to, sort of brew that into all the other things that we do has beginning to make a difference and will continue to make a difference as we grow and mature.
All right, this is the take-home value portion of our podcast. We always, whenever we have experts on the podcast, we try to get their best advice. So if I'm a CX leader out there, what's your best advice, Sharon, for trying to drive positive change through the organization using CX?
Have great colleagues.
Have great colleagues.
Align yourself well with your team. I mean, I don't do this on my own. I have a great team that I work with, and align yourself with others within the organization. CX is not always the most funded department, and not from a from a resource perspective. When you have the focus on operations, the resource is not always, you don't have 20 or 30 people. So align yourself within the organization so that you can use that to push out the story.
And Carolyn, as a enlightened user of CX data, what advice would you have for the CX pros to make themselves more effective inside their organizations, helping people like you who are not really directly involved in the CX but can make a difference by the way that you interact every day?
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to answer the same question you asked, but
All right. Well, you're the guest, so you can do whatever you want. So.
My advice was going to be to include the training team early and often, because we make an impact on both new associates and the ones that are joining the company through our implementations. And if you can get the training team on board, we have the opportunity to integrate it throughout all of the training materials for all of the associates in the entire company at all levels in all programs. And so if you get the training team involved, then you're almost guaranteed integration in all of the training and education that's happening in your company. And I think it will make the cultural change go faster.
Absolutely. What's next for Medxcel on this program? Sharon?
We are looking to do a little bit more from a training perspective, actually, from leadership development and technician development and their customer service skills. So that's kind of this year. We're also looking into some automation. I mentioned earlier that we were taking different programs and molding them together and linking customer engagement and associate engagement, and to try to develop the full story of how we can improve.
Yeah, this is a great case study because your people are so intertwined with their customers on a daily basis.
Yep.
How about from your perspective, Carolyn, what's the immediate future hold for the training team?
Well, we look forward to integrating even more of this. I'm just beginning to understand all that Sharon has done over these last few years and all that the team continues to do, but we have certainly opportunities in leadership development and in our associate development in terms of their customer service skills, as Sharon said. So we'll be involved with that. And I think we will begin a new model, actually a new training model, where we have many of our leaders in the field start to become our on-site trainers. So we'll be transitioning some to a train-the-trainer type model where we help our managers become the leaders and teachers of the customer experience as well.
Anything that we didn't get in today that you wanted to share?
No, you guys have been
Ladies?
great. This was fairly painless.
No, it's just people talking about CX.
That's right.
It's pretty easy to do when you do it all the time. Well, hey, we've just concluded a fascinating conversation with the folks at Medxcel. Sharon Bislich is the manager of customer engagement, and Carolyn Bodkin is the head of the training team. Sharon and Carolyn, thanks again for being guests on the podcast, and
Thank you for having
continue
us.
good luck. And for all of us that at some point end up in a healthcare setting, thank you for the great work you do, because probably nobody wants to be there, but when you're there, you really do appreciate the care and the facilities and all that. So appreciate all the good work you do. If anybody'd like to get a hold of you guys, could you just quickly share information, LinkedIn or email or something like that?
I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm at sharon.bislich@medxcelfm.com.
And Carolyn?
Also on LinkedIn, and carolyn.bodkin at medxcelfm.com.
Well, thanks again, ladies, and appreciate you sharing your story with us today. And if you want to talk about anything else we discussed or about how Walker can help your business's customer experience, you can contact me here at steve.walker@walkerinformation.com or call me here in the U.S. at 1-317-843-8890. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. We'd love to talk to you some more. Don't forget to subscribe to the CX Leader podcast. We just went over, I think, 11 or 12,000 downloads a couple weeks ago, so that's pretty cool. Your interest in the show and your continued patronage is much appreciated, and we'll keep putting out good content as long as you keep listening. You can find links at walkerinfo.com/podcasts. We're on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and you can also check out our YouTube channel as well. Simply go to walkerinfo.tv to listen. Thank you for listening to the CX Leader podcast, which is a production of Walker. We're a business consulting firm that can help you make customer experience your biggest competitive advantage. Find out more at walkerinfo.com. Thanks for being with us on this podcast, and we look forward to seeing you here again next time.